Jesus has his disciples with him, and he walks up to the temple. He takes a look around, and then he turns around and leaves. He goes back to Bethany. The next morning, he's going back to the temple. On the way, he sees a fig tree. As he approaches, he notices it has no figs. He makes a statement. You shall never bear fruit again, and makes his way on to the temple. Why did he curse the fig tree? One of the age-old questions. Let's talk about this one. Jesus curses the fig tree. I love this story. I didn't always love it. It puzzled me for a really long time until I started paying attention to the context. It's very much like one of the old boutique gift shops that they had in the mall where you could go in and they had posters hanging on the wall. The kind of posters that you had to stare at for a while. They looked like absolutely nothing until you sat there and stared at them for 5-10 minutes, or in my case, didn't seem to matter how long. I never could figure out what the picture was. But that's what this story was like to me. I like the Mark 11 version the best because it gives us a detail that is very important. And that detail is that Jesus went to the temple the previous night. Imagine, Jesus walks into the temple. He's got his guys in tow. He looks around. I think he shakes his head. Scripture says it was late. But I think he shakes his head and he leaves. It's evening, it's late evening. And it says he goes to Bethany. It's Mark chapter 11, verses 11 and 12 right in there. So on the next day, he's coming from Bethany, going back to the temple. He sees this fig tree. The fig tree looks like it should have fruit on it. He approaches it. Scripture says it was not the season to have figs. And Jesus seems to take issue with the fact that it didn't. It seems completely unreasonable, does it not? Jesus looks at the fig tree and curses it. The nature of the curse was this: you will never bear fruit again. His disciples are paying attention, and they continue on to the temple. I would imagine those guys are just scratching their heads. What in the world just happened? Rabbis with authority like Jesus, they did things like this. They were really, the best word I've heard is quirky. They cursed fig trees, and they cured blindness, and they made mud pies out of their spit and put it in people's eyes, and they visited with people they shouldn't be visiting with, and this was no exception. Jesus was he was an interesting guy. And here he was heading on to the temple. Now, we know this story because when he gets to the temple, he looks around again and he's angry at what he sees. So he fashions a whip made out of cords, and he starts turning over tables and driving cattle and livestock out of the temple, and the money changers, and all of those who were set up to make a profit on temple services. Understand that the temple was a place where one could go and buy a sacrifice because families were coming from all over the countryside. They were not all of the occupation where they could raise a suitable sacrifice. The one thing they did have was money. So they could bring their money to the temple and purchase a lamb for Passover and give that lamb to the priest. And that would be the family offering. And that was okay. The problem is that there were so many people set up around the temple to make money off of the people. It was like a fig tree that was offering the people something, but ultimately the people ended up empty. You see, that system, the Mosaic system, was on its last days. The law came through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. That system, the Mosaic system, was on its way out. And that's part of the reason why, is because the priesthood had become a racketeering group of people that did not have the welfare of the people in mind. They were in it for themselves. In a sense, the temple and the system, the Mosaic system, had become that fig tree. People went hoping to be fed something, but yet they couldn't find anything fulfilling. In fact, they left broker, poorer, if you will, more empty than when they showed up. It was just like the fig tree. Now, when they left, after Jesus cleanses the temple and does his spring cleaning, they pass the fig tree again, and the disciples marvel. And Peter says, "Jesus, look, the fig tree that you cursed is dried up from the roots." Jesus says this very profound thing. He says, "Have faith in God." That seems like an odd answer, does it not? Have faith in God. It almost seems unrelated. And yet, for all of those people that went to the temple hoping to get a sacrifice accepted so that they could be in the favor of God, they had, in a sense, put their faith into a lamb or into a broker that was going to sell them a lamb, a system that was set up as a facade to get them to have faith in a system, and it had let them down. This was the problem Jesus had with temple life during that time. His Father's house was no longer a house of prayer. Have faith in God. Don't have faith in the system. That's the reason Jesus cursed the fig tree. It was yet a picture of a system that made a promise it was unable to keep. I love that. It's a picture that once you see it every time. Hope you enjoyed it. I have enjoyed being with you this week. Visit my Facebook page, facebook.com/embracetheq. And there's a lot of other content on there daily. Would love to see you on there. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. And I will see you next week. Blessings.